Welcome to episode 5 of BStoltman Speaks. I'm going to continue this one with the questions that I started with my last video, which are, what are your views of the Bible and what are your personal religious views? From the last video that I did, I kind of elaborated that I don't really take creed in the Bible in the way that most people do. Where I might change my view from Thomas Paine would be that I do see relevance in it. I don't think it's all just complete dogma and just control. I think that there is a history there that is trying to be portrayed and revealed to people. And I think that there were multiple levels, like, in secret societies and that when you talk, there's an inner and an outer order. The outer order would be what most people see. It's the religious doctrine, the hard rules, and this is what you're going to do, and they view it very fundamentally, usually, to an extent. But within the inner order, for like the priests and those kind of things, I think there was a completely different meaning. Not to say that now general priests know what's going on. I think that maybe within the Catholic Church, if you were to go all the way up to the archbishops and those closest to the Pope in that, they probably know that there's of a different story. But that's a whole different section there. The overall religious views, all the religions in that, I think are telling a similar story, and they're trying to show something in different ways based on different cultures' way of perceiving them or telling those stories. If you go back to the Egyptian and the Christian and the Jewish Torah, basically the first 5 books of the Bible, or Hinduism, there are a lot of parallels. A lot of usually it seems to deal with astrotheology. The different astrological signs, the Earth going within those regions, and it would be represented by a main symbol that would reference that age, and then usually a new religion would take over as soon as they were outside that age. The Hindus, they had the bull, and they talk about the slaying of the bull and that, and that's the end of it. That's why Hindus tend to worship the cow and that kind of thing, or have reverence for it. It's not really worshiping the cow, but it's along those lines. It has great meaning to them. And then it was the Jews that got it after that, and that was more the age of Aries, which was the ram, and you'll see how it's in original Jewish ideas, they would blow the ram's horn and things like that. And that's why you read about in the Bible, in the Old Testament, how Moses goes up onto Mount Sinai to speak with God, the burning bush and all that, and he comes back down with the 2 tablets with the commandments, and he finds that everyone's fornicating and worshiping this golden calf that's existed, or that they created. And the reason they're doing that is because it's kind of coming from the Taurus age. The bull was revered, and Moses gets really upset at that because it's the new age. He went up there in order to bring the new age in which had to do with the ram. And you'll see that he gets upset and smashes them, and he ends up going back up and getting a new set of 10 commandments that's a lot more strict and a lot more I don't know what I should say, more like rules. We don't know what the original ones were, so who knows, maybe those were too. I don't know, but the first set were destroyed, and that's something that a lot of people probably don't even acknowledge, that we didn't even pass the first part. And then after that, and another kind of an interesting fact is Moses, in a lot of religious artwork, especially on Catholic churches and that, you'll see statues of Moses up on the the upper parts of the cathedral and that. And a lot of times he will have little ram's horns, they'll be kind of sticking out. And most people don't notice these things. But I mean, if you looked at it and you realize that's Moses, why does he have horns? I mean, that kind of makes him devil-like almost. And you realize because he was the representation of bringing in the ram, the new age. And that continues on, and then, a couple thousand years later, we end up with Jesus, who comes along. And what symbol do we use to represent Jesus? Everyone's driving around with these little Jesus fish on the backs of their vehicles, and you'll find them on, sermon pamphlets and things, a fish. And most people think, well, it just has to do with that line where, being a fisher of man and that kind of thing. That is partially, but the reason that it's a fish and not something else is because that has to do with the New Age. And the New Age was Pisces. And Pisces was represented by a fish. And so for those 2,000 years, kept going. And now we're exiting those 2,000 years now, again. And now that religion is kind of collapsing. A lot of people are saying it's the end of the world and all that, the Revelation and whatnot. And I don't think that's quite true. I think that it's we're entering a new age, and in order for that to occur, the old age has to kind of collapse to an extent. And so now we're entering a new age, which is the age of Aquarius, which is represented by a man dumping water, and I'm intrigued to see what they're going to do, how they're going to pull this off. What's going to be the new thing. Are we going to have worship of water? Maybe. I mean, there are some people who say that water is one of the things that we're going to be fighting for in the future, and having a hard time getting clean water in that with the economic collapse. And maybe it will be. Maybe it'll be brought up to a deity status because everyone will be fighting for it. I don't know. I hope not. But I don't know. I mean, that's just one idea. I don't think that this next one is going to be quite as religious like it was in the past, because people have moved on from such dogmatic ways of viewing things. But the establishment seems to still have an obsession with doing these things. And so I think there is going to be something to do with water that we're going to use as the new religion. Maybe it could be just that everything is made of water, and so we're going to start revering the earth a lot more. There's a lot of signs of earth worship occurring and things like that, and that's not even necessarily bad, to be honest. I mean, there's a lot of good reasons for that, but when you treat something with extreme reverence like that, eventually it kind of does take on a godlike status or a religious type of status, in which, as I said, could be a good thing, but it depends on to what extent, So that's something that we've seen correlate throughout history. But as I said, all these religions had these very common trends that seem to occur. And I'm very intrigued by what those things are. There seems to be a lot of solar worship. Jesus is the sun, he's the light, he's the word, he's all these things. And then you go back to Horus back in the old days, and Horus is the light and the Savior and the Redeemer and all these things. And these things are all in their text. And it's kind of a thing that goes through, and Zeitgeist covers this very well. It covers the astrological side and then the birth and death of Jesus. And so it kind of makes you wonder, well, was he real, or is it just an allegorical story representing this history, this idea? I don't know. I have to say that the one has to be true, but maybe both are true. I don't know. Maybe he was real. He was a real man who really did things. I lean towards no, because there just isn't enough evidence. I would think it would be written about in a lot more places about Jesus doing these things. There are, I think it was 3 major spots that of historians that wrote about it, but that was it. And there were a lot that didn't. Josephus was one of them who actually did mention a guy named Jesus. Well, I think it was Yosef Ben Hur or something like that. I can't remember. Something Ben. And said that he came into Jerusalem and changed things. But that was it. It was like one line. It kind of alluded to it, but it wasn't that grand. And for someone who did those things, it should have been tons of pages. So, and there's been argument on whether that's actually been added in later and stuff to try and give reason for his existence. And again, I don't know. I don't care either way, to be honest. But yeah, that's what's occurred. But as I said, there does seem to be a view, and especially if you go all the way back to the Sumerian texts and that, you start seeing this story kind of broken down into a much different form, yet it's the same correlation still kind of occurring. And it usually involves what seems like aliens or something coming down here and manipulating the genes of mankind, and that actually would explain why we can't find, we